1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to the GRWN Woman Podcast.
With your host, Marianne and,
of course, Shakia.
Get ready for candid conversations, expert insights, and plenty of laughter along the way.
Of course.
Tune in and join our community of empowered women navigating life's journey with style and grace.
With style and grace. Love it. Tune into today's episode. Welcome to the GRWN Woman Podcast. We're back with another amazing episode. Super excited about this one.
Super excited.
And I think I say that every time. But then I'm really excited.
I know.
I'd be really excited about it. Yeah. We're excited every time. So we're going to start with our check-in.
Mm-hmm.
What's been going on with you? How's life? Has it been lifing?
Life be lifing, I guess in a good way. Just crazy busy with work, with this project, with other projects. Feeling excited for our upcoming trip.
Oh. Where are we going, though?
We're going to Chocolate Town.
Fun fact. So we're going to DC, y'all. Although it is a pre-birthday celebration. This trip came, if y'all missed our very first episode, it talked about how she was being introduced to the chocolate culture of these chocolate men. She wanted to try it out, right? And so we were all out for dinner one day. And one of our friends was like, well, if you want to know chocolate men, DC is where it's at. So the very same night, I think she booked a flight.
I didn't book. She's making me sound desperate here.
I think her flight was booked because she called me the next day like, this is the itinerary. But no, it wasn't. It wasn't booked the same night, but in that week, we had a trip planned to DC. So I'm going as moral support because I know the chocolate.
We're going to work. We're going to work. We are going to work. We have amazing things lined up. And
we do.
Getting away from Milwaukee. Yeah. By the time you guys see this, the Republican convention, it will be done. But we're also trying to get away from the craziness in Milwaukee.
That's happening in the city.
Great things, to improve our city, bring money to our city, but we don't want to be involving on any of the craziness. So I'm happy that we're getting away.
Yeah.
And we had a great weekend too.
Yeah.
It was a busy weekend, but we had a lot of fun.
We celebrated this one that we're about to introduce. And so that was fun being on the boat. I think you almost lost your life maybe 2 or 3 times dramatically. She was more worried about her veneers than her life. Maybe we'll throw a clip in there. Maybe we could throw a clip after this that shows how she put everybody's life in danger. But no, it was a great weekend. Same for me, planning the birthday, getting ready to celebrate.
Her birthday's coming up. 40th. So we're going to have footage of that once we do, our next episode.
Yes, we're going to do that.
Unfortunately, we are going to miss it.
Well, fortunately, they're going to create a celebration. They just don't know. We're going to celebrate once I come back.
A different day. But I think it's going to be a great party.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see the videos, to see everything that's going to happen. I'm sorry we are going to miss it, but we'll celebrate you when we come back.
Then she's going to celebrate with me in Cancun too. So,
oh my God.
Yes, we got some podcasts lined up there.
I have so much money to spend that I don't even know what to do with it. That's why I'm doing all of these things.
Hey now.
Hey, changing the way I say things. But
ready to get the show started. So this is this is actually how we were connected.
Mm-hmm.
Jasmin was a friend of both of ours, and I think we connected, which we could talk about like different levels of how we connected, but such an amazing person, an amazing soul. We're acting like she's not sitting right here. But we tell her amazing things all the time, and excited for this episode, one, because it's personal, it's close to my heart, but it's also, again, conversations that we have all the time. And you're about to celebrate your 35th birthday. She's still a baby, y'all. So happy early birthday.
Happy birthday.
And as we said, we celebrated her this weekend. Prior to the podcast, we had some great dinner and some amazing cake that I'm going to get a piece afterwards. But welcome, Jasmin.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited. I'm literally so proud of both of you. for doing this. I think literally it's the perfect match. And I think you guys balance each other out. Watching you guys do the setup is hilarious, by the way. I think you should release a recording of that. But I'm so happy and honored to be here.
Yeah, awesome sauce.
The thing is, guys, that our team that does the editing and everything is overseas. So every time we record, we have to call him to make sure that we are getting things the correct way so we can give you a quality episode with sound.
Because we're learning. We're learning as we go. We're like a 2-woman band with tons of supporters. Pretty soon we'll have like a whole crew. But till then, it's us and we rocking the mic. So mic check 1 2 1 2. Okay, awesome. So I wanted this episode to be about faith and friendships. But first I want to just start off like you sharing your story of like who you are, who Jasmin is, what she represents, and why your faith is important to you.
Okay. Who am I? I'm very strong. I'm very ambitious, motivated. I can be very hard on the exterior, I think, but I have a lot of love for the people that are around me. And I have a small family. So I actually live near Marianne.
We're neighbors.
Yeah, we're neighbors. So it's my husband and I, my son, and our stepson. 2 puppies who I love with all my heart.
It's just such a
Do you understand that? Yeah.
I don't understand, but
yeah, grew up in Milwaukee, been here all my life. And yeah, I've just navigated life as a single mom for many years. And that is probably a big part of coming back to my faith. I grew up in the church a little bit. My parents were recovering drug and alcohol addicts, and so they were really finding their faith as well. So as a young child, they started taking us to church, and so we were kind of figuring it out together. But the intimacy that I feel like I have now wasn't there at that age. So when I met my son's dad, I kind of left the church and did my own thing for several years. But I feel like children have a way of bringing us back to faith when they have questions. They teach us purpose. And it made me seek my relationship with God again. And I think for me, at least, it's taken catastrophic things to happen in my life in order for me to find God again. And so it was, being a single mom and then also losing my dad in 2017. That was the year that I really recommitted my life back to him and, dedicated my life to, okay, what does it really mean to love God and to know God? So, yeah.
So you currently are part of a ministry. You started a ministry. And it's a very different kind of ministry. You're also a part of this ministry.
We do church different.
And they do church very different. So fun fact, I grew up very apostolic Pentecostal. So for those that know that, it is similar to like Kojic, but very, very holy or hell, but very religious. I'm not going to say that we didn't grow up knowing and loving God, but it was more focused on a lot of kind of religious focus of what you look like, how you dressed, versus the personal. And I'm saying this for myself, so don't come for me if you're apostolic or Pentecostal. I love my upbringing in the church. But I was in church about 5 days a week. We were there till about 2 a.m. every service.
Wow.
I mean, they were long services. I'm exaggerating, but that's what I grew up in. I grew up in that. And so hearing the ministry you guys are started and a part of is very different from what I know, right? I serve in a non-denomination church right now. We still have some kind of like traditional beliefs or values, you would say, to us, but just kind of like talk about that.
Okay. So the idea or the vision or, how God used us in this ministry for me personally was never in the plans to be a church. But God kind of unfolded and did the unexpected once we stepped out. So in 2021, I was serving at my former church, and I was a youth leader, and my husband and I were there for like 3 years, and I love the kids, the teens, but it's exhausting to do that on a constant on a daily basis. So in October of 2021, I took a break, and I was just seeking God for 30 days. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to pray. I'm going to fast. I'm going to meet with women in ministry and just, learn about their stories. But every time I would go out for a coffee, somewhere in the conversation or somewhere along my drive, God started speaking to me about the homeless and women in sex trafficking and the youth that are in our city. And so I told my husband, I said, I don't think I can go back to serving as a youth leader doing this the same way that we did before. And I think it's going to look different. I think God is pulling me out to something different, but I don't know what that is yet. So I remember having my husband and we went to have a conversation with one of the pastors from that church. And I never want to, speak in a negative light, but when he received it, it was more so of like, great, we get a lot of ideas from people who want to start different things within the church. But we have a cafe manager position open. We'll pay you. Would you like to do that? And I was like, what? Absolutely not. I think we need, a cafe manager. And I was there since I was 9 years old. So I really feel that other than that conversation, the church really did a good job at equipping me and giving me all the tools. And so I had a dream like a week after that conversation, and the dream was about the Walker's Point neighborhood. And it even was so specific to the street and a building. And I told my husband, I'm like, we need to serve in Walker's Point, and we need to give back to that community. There's so much hurt. There's so much confusion and division and separation in that community. We need to go back. And a good friend of ours heard that we were stepping away from youth ministry, and he's like, I would love to hear more about where you guys are headed. So he invited us over for dinner, and he said, share with me like what God is giving you a vision of. And I said, actually, share with me first what's on your heart. And he said, 13 years ago, God gave me this vision to be in Walker's Point. But he told me that to be patient because this was going to be a double-headed ministry, that he wasn't going to do it alone. And he said, I've never knew when that time was, but I know I have to go back to Walker's Point, and I need to serve there. And I remember I looked at my husband during that dinner, and I was like, and he, in his vision, in his conversation with us, he gave the specific street and the specific building that was in my vision. And we were just like, and I told him, and we were just in awe, like, okay, I don't know what this looks like, but we're going to step out in faith, and we're going to do this together. And we're just going to be obedient to what God is calling us to do. So for the first year, we just did outreach. We built relationships with the police district, with, women in sex work and the nonprofits and the churches in the area. Because if you look around any city that you're in, there's not a shortage of churches. No. But there's a church on every corner, but there's a shortage of people coming outside of the church to be with the people. And the neighbors don't feel comfortable to come as they are into the church. Like you said, it's very religious. I mean, it can be very intimidating. And, there was one conversation I had with this woman. She was addicted to drugs. She was homeless, and she was also a prostitute. And she said, churches come by here and they do events all the time in the park, but it's almost like a drive-by. Wow. Like you guys do drive-by evangelism because when we need you, you're nowhere to be found. Oh. And it something in me and all of us actually. And we said, okay, I think we need to plant some roots here. And that's how the church was birthed. But we didn't want it to be a traditional church. We went to a couple of church planting conferences, and it was very business-like. It was almost like we were going to a convention to run a business. And, I think I was going to say, there's still business to the church. There's formalities and systems that the church needs in order to disciple well, which we're learning. But to raise hundreds of thousands of money just to go into a marketing plan and equipment and the show was just not right with us. So I do want to make sure that we kind of touch on that, right? Because I know a lot of people like that point, right? Yeah. Well, there's a big thing with giving in ministries. There's a big thing with tithes and offerings and all of those things. So I don't want to brush over that because everyone has kind of this opinion. Yeah. I'm a very firm believer on tithes. I'm a very firm believer on offerings and giving, right? And I think because my background is business, I do. And then I grew up in a church. I do understand when you see the behind the scenes, bills still have to be paid. Electric still has to be paid. And so part of it is still realizing that you're in a ministry that still has to function, right? There are still needs that has to happen in the church where that those tithes and those offerings take up for. So I think a lot of people in some churches, it's the truth. In some churches, it has happened where when you give the pastor, they feel like it's going to the pastor and it's going to their lifestyle. And in some ministries, that may have been the case. But I never want to support that ideal of that is what all churches are doing. But I always have this argument of when people be like, people act like church is a business. And I'm like, it's God's business, right? Because you're handling God's business and he will supply all of the needs, but he also needs his people to be obedient and he needs his people to give so that the ministry can flourish, right? So I did want to kind of like, because I felt like some people in they shanana that's going to be like, see, 100%. This is why we don't give. And it's like, no, just how you may have some things going on in your home. If you've never paid a bill, we energies don't care, right? You can love the Lord, but your light's still gonna get cut off because it's principle, right?
And at the end of the day, it's about your heart posture when you give. Right. Like I give because I want to give, whether that's my money, whether that's my time. If I give it to an organization and they're doing something else with the money, at the end of the day, God knows why I gave that money, and he'll take care of whatever he needs to. Don't worry about what they're worrying about what you're supposed to be doing.
So let me go back to that. When we were at the conventions for church planters, until we had this set amount of money raised, we couldn't even do church. We knew that we had to do church right then and there. And so that format was not for us to even plant a church. And this is like the traditional church that you see. There's a terminology that we began to hear often, and it's called microchurch. And my husband was looking into it. There was Miami Underground that really operates as a microchurch. And then we began to find alignment in what a microchurch is. And so a microchurch is basically a church that doesn't have overhead. So we don't need a full board of deacons. We don't need we don't need a lot of the home base to support. What we can do is meet in a home, and let me tell you, we've met in very unconventional spaces, but we could do that as a microchurch because our goal is to be in the community and meeting their needs. And so we began to explore what that route would look like, but this is where I go back to the importance of the formalities. So we completely understood, and I believe God gave us the discernment. Discernment is knowing like whether this is right or wrong in God's eyes. That we couldn't do this on our own, that we needed to have a covering. And it was important to us that we had a covering church, that could keep us accountable and that could check in with us, that could pray for us. And so we began to seek that. That was our requirement, and that was what we needed to be obedient to before starting a church. So it wasn't the funding for us. It was we needed covering and we need accountability. And there was many churches that came that we met with, and it was almost there. It was almost there in, this is the vision that God is giving Unite Ministry. I don't want you to change it. I don't want you to conform. I don't want you to assimilate to the church community. This is my ministry, right? It's not people's ministry. This is God's ministry. Mm-hmm. And so we built some awesome relationships, and then we had to say, God is not an almost God. He's going to meet us 100%. Mm-hmm. And we have to be very patient until that happens. And then we met the covering pastor that we have now. And he actually brought up, hey, have you guys heard of microchurch? And we said, yeah. And he was like, God gave me a vision that we're going to plant 100 churches. And, a chunk of those are going to be microchurches. Mm-hmm. And everything that he said that he wanted us to move forward in was in alignment to what the vision that God gave us. So once we had his covering and his blessing, and everything was aligned exactly to how God wanted it to be, we planted our micro church. And so we would meet in our homes every once in a while. We met behind a bar. Right now we're in a club. But
we do church different.
We do church different. And it's been the most challenging, but the most rewarding. And we always say, like, we don't have to do this. Yeah. We get to do this. Yeah.
So kind of just thinking about, right, doing church different and understanding your reach in the community. I kind of want to hit 2 points. One, being very young in the faith, mm-hmm. young over a ministry, young in the ministry. I think a lot of people, and again, I always talk from a perspective of growing up in the church. So I think for me, it's very different for people who may have not grown in the church. When you think about how to be young and saved, right? What does that look like? Because I don't think a lot of people believe that it's doable, that you can still have fun. Because when I grew up, I couldn't wait to get out of the church because it wasn't fun. It was very restrictive. Right. It was very prison-based. It was very like cultish, right? It was, when I turned 18, it was more like 17 because I became a teen mom. I was like, I am out of here. And when I went to college, I did. Like, God was still in my heart. And I was scared to not go to church because it was embedded in me, but I lost that relationship because I wanted freedom. Mm-hmm. So if you think about it and look around, young people our ages, millennials on down, look for freedom. So what would you encourage a person that's like, one, don't have a relationship with God, or two, that's like, I want to kick it with God, but I still want my freedom. I still want to be young. I still want to date. I still want to dress up. I still want to go out. I still want to Like, what would y'all say to that?
Yeah, I'll start just because you have the key word that you said is freedom. Yeah. And so I think people get warped into what freedom really is when it's not in God's perspective. True freedom only comes from being in salvation and in relationship with Jesus. Right. When you're in the world and you are doing things that are satisfying your flesh, you think that's freedom, but exactly, you're putting yourself in bondage. And the enemy will always trick you into doing something to satisfy your flesh or to be sinful. But once you're there, he will shame you for it. So,
because it's the scripture that says wide is the road. I can't remember, but narrow is the way, right? Mm-hmm. So if it's easy and everybody's doing it, that's always a telltale of like, is this God?
Yeah.
Right?
And salvation is easy, right? If somebody were to say, I believe that Jesus died and rose again and I repent of my sins and I accept him into my life, you have salvation. It's easy. Living in abundance in the kingdom here on earth and heaven and experiencing his goodness, experience his kindness and keeping, within the faith, that is the narrow path. Yeah. That is the thing. And so.
But why is that part challenging?
it's challenging because going back to that freedom, like we get when there's confusion of what freedom is, God is not a God of confusion. But I think that we're battling several things. We're battling not just the enemy, because I don't ever want to give him that much credit. We're battling our flesh. Our flesh itself falls short, but then we're also battling the world and how the world has such heavy culture, social media. There's a lot of FOMO. Like, we're so connected and we're so easily influenced by the world around us that it's not just the enemy. It's, the world can cave in, but God calls us, Jesus calls us to be set apart and sanctified. And that's what people are scared to do.
It's called discipline and obedience. It's hard to discipline, right? Just think about it. I love cake. I love ice cream, cupcakes, right? Right? Yes. But having a piece of that every day is not good for me. Right? Every now and then is good. But think about if I'm eating a cake, every day, a cupcake, sprinkles, ice cream every single day. What is that feeding? Right? How is that nourishing me? And that's like the relationship with God of, we want to do all of these things. We want to go out. We want to drink. We want to party. It's not benefiting us, right? But building that relationship. So if I had to sacrifice and discipline and say, okay, gym, Kia, eat broccoli today, that's benefiting my body. It's building me up. And that's how it is with the relationship of God, of the things that are good for us. Most of the time, it's hard to do because it doesn't feel good. And I always have to remind myself, I'll be like, where are we? Like, what am I feeling? Have I been disciplined? Because we don't like it, but I have to recognize, like, I want favor over my life, 100%. Right? I want to walk in and my light shines. I want to know that God got my back. And so I have to be in position because he's not going to force us, right? I read something this morning in my devotion that said, God will shield us and act as a shield if we don't move from behind it. Right? And it's like, so many times we're like, God protects us, but he's like, you moved in front of me. I can't. You stepped outside of it. If you get back behind the shield, which is his word, which is the Bible, which is understanding. And that blew my mind because I was like, oh, how many times do we move in front of him and then be like, but God, you said you're going to protect me. He's like, get back behind the shield and you'll be protected.
I think I also don't want to paint this narrative that being a Christian or being a woman of faith is boring.
Talk about it.
Once
we had a lot of fun.
We had a lot of fun. Right.
Like, we laughed.
One thing I'm going to do is love God and still kick it. Okay.
Right. Yeah, I love kicking it. My favorite thing to do in the world is laugh. Like, when we're together, I'm going to laugh like a crazy person.
Freedom.
I'm going to scream.
Peace of mind.
Exactly.
Like, we didn't drink. And I've said this before. I still drink as a Christian. I don't drink to get drunk, but I have my mojitos, my wine sometimes. And I feel like the day that God asked me to stop doing that, I'm going to be obedient. But we didn't drink Saturday. We heard, bachata, salsa that are Christian.
I haven't laughed
in Tim's because, and
I haven't laughed that hard in literally forever. Going back to your teeth and
I feel like when I'm in spaces where I can be myself, I let my inner child out.
We should be able to be ourselves always, right? That's how, I mean, you should be.
I mean, I can't go to work and be like, oh my God, and scream.
No, but I'm saying authentically you.
Yes.
We should be able to be in these spaces.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? And that's freedom. Yes. That is true freedom, to be able to show up.
Oh, for sure.
Be yourself and know that you're still loved.
Because you know that when you know that God created you to be exactly the way that you are, then you have permission to be exactly who you are.
What is the scripture that he says?
Made in his image.
Yes, I'm beautifully and wonderfully made, right? Because we're made in his image. And that's when we accept who we are in him, right? So I love how you pointed it out. Because again, one thing I'm going to do is enjoy my life. I'm going to enjoy my life.
And even in the book of Jeremiah, he starts by saying, I knew who you were.
I formed you. You better preach.
From your mom's womb. Like, so sometimes, like with me, I still consider myself a baby Christian, but the walk with me hasn't been easy because I'm used to a totally different lifestyle. I've always believe in God, but I have never been like, I'm going to be obedient. I have tried to solve my life on my own for so long that now I need guidance. And I'm telling you, when he started talking to me, I was like, you know, like one of the first things that he wanted me to give up, and I still remember, was I used to dress very revealing. And we were talking about this earlier, like even at the gym, I love working out, but I'm covered just because I feel like that was what he wanted me to, because when you give your life to God, you're renewed, you're reborn. So that was the first thing I remember, going through my closet and getting rid of a bunch of things. He's still working in me. I feel like there's a lot of
working on all of us.
I feel like, but I feel like that was the main thing he wanted me to give up, because drawing attention for men in the past for me was like a big thing. So that's what I was using to have people look at me and things like that. And that's not what he wanted for me. He wanted to show me that people will see me because of the light that I have. And when I walk into,
want that,
and it's so different, like the way people talk to you, the way people acknowledge you.
People have even recognized that in you.
100%. And I get it all the time.
And when you said like the Holy Spirit talked to you, I also want to just like encourage everyone else too, is once you find faith, it's not like now you have to abide by. You live a certain life, right? But it's not like, oh, now I got all these rules. When the Holy Spirit speaks to you, he speaks to you not in a judgmental, condemning way, but he gently convicts you. For me, he's always been such a gentleman in my life, where he's like, I'm going to reveal something to you, but I want you to know it's because I love you, and it's because I'm setting you apart, and I'm transforming you, and I'm renewing you from the inside. And so you begin to see yourself in the way that he sees you. And he wants to protect us, and he's such a kind, he's a kind friend, you know?
But I think it's the relationship, because he deals with me differently, right? I love how you say he's such a gentleman.
He smacks you around.
He does, right? I'm one of those children of God.
Oh, he will do that to me once in a
Listen, I'm a very stubborn, hard-headed child, right? And I've always been that child growing up, like, prove it. Prove it to me, right? If this is what I'm supposed to do, and not even with that, just with life, right? Of like, oh, they said I couldn't do this, I'm gonna show them, or right. And so I'm always like, I'm gonna prove it to you, or you prove it to me. And so God come at me, you know. I feel like he be like snatching me up by the t-shirt, like, hey, I said, and I'd be like, all right, I hear you, right? And I think the older I get and the more mature I get in Christ, I'm like, okay, you know, I want to hear you the first time and not the second time. But he will, and I say that to say, based on the relationship you have with God, based on who you are.
I think in what you need at the moment,
I was going to say in what you need. My life is just so like nonstop, right? And I'm learning to have those quiet moments to stop and recognize. But he has to be like, hey, like, I need your attention. And so that is the gloriness of God, where he has promises for us. Like he knows Jeremiah 29:11. He knows the plans he has for us, but he also knows the hairs on our head. He also knows how to deal with us appropriately. So he's a gentleman with her, because she can sit and listen. And for me, he has to snatch me up, because I'm like, all right.
I think it's what we're like, where we're at too, because he has like, you know, yanked me and sat me down for a second. But I've also seen him very gentle with you too.
In some moments, I said as I mature, like he came in like, all right, she in humble mode right now.
She's in her
right?
soft girl,
soft girl era. He like, she in her soft girl era. Let me rock with her.
Right.
And I know a lot of people are like, God, talk to you. When you gain a relationship
with him, will talk to you.
He will talk to you in various of ways, right? I've heard him orally. I've heard him in scripture. I've heard him through media. So he'll talk to you. I've heard him through people, through prophets and prophetess. So if you want to hear from God, he'll
just ask him.
He'll talk to you.
Just God, talk to me.
Yeah.
Tell me what I need to hear. And you're going to hear right away, baby.
You could be sitting in a club with a mojito in your hand.
And he going to talk to you.
Let me
and he going to talk to you.
I've been in some situations that I shouldn't have been in. And I'm like, really? Right now?
He's like,
You finna convict me? Why? I'm like, hey, sorry, we can't do this. Because he will.
Yeah.
He will be like, remember you promised? And I'll be
you
like,
don't belong here. Yeah. 100%.
And everyone's relationship with God is different, right? Like, sometimes, and I talk for my community, the Hispanic community, growing up in between the Catholic and Christian church, in our culture, in some churches, women can wear pants, no earrings, no makeup. So, at the beginning I was scared because, I used to talk to her husband and I'm like, girl, I'm still going to inject my lips. Like, I can't give my lips up. So, like sometimes, especially when I told my mom that I made this decision and I will go back home because my stepdad is hardcore Christian, and certain pastor that I will listen to, he's like always making comments and he's very by the rules.
That's a legalistic Christianity.
Yeah. So certain things that I would do, he will be making comments like, aren't you a Christian? You shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be saying that. And I'm like, you should be happy that I made this decision. And if there's someone that needs to convict me, it's God. You should be praying. Because sometimes God will show people. You just need to pray for them. We're nobody to start telling people.
Judge.
Exactly.
God doesn't judge, and He'll deal with us accordingly.
Yep.
Well, He will judge, but
He doesn't. He tell us not to judge,
right?
Because He will deal with us accordingly, right?
Oh, like I heard something the other day, and she was like, "I hate when people say, only God can judge me." She was like, do you understand the weight if only God can judge you? She was like, you're better off being righteously judged here on earth, correcting yourself and getting yourself right before you sit at the throne on judgment day with God. I know.
Bars.
Like, wow.
Bars.
Jackie Hill.
But you know what? Like, also us as Christian and those of us that have like us, like a close friendship, I think that there's nothing wrong sometimes too. Like if you're seeing like something that doesn't align, to be like, hey, Kia. Hey, Jasmin, I don't think, because when we were part of the world and we were going to the clubs and you look bad in that dress, we're going to be like, girl, why are you wearing that? You know what I mean? So why wouldn't, like in a loving way, because we don't want to be judgmental towards people, but that's why it's important to surround yourself with friendships that align.
Iron sharpens iron.
Exactly, where you at. Because then I've told her before, like if I have my faith friends and I have some friends that are not, part of the faith. Like if I'm going to make a dumb decision and I call my worldly friends, they're going to be like, yeah, go do it. But if I call you or you, you're going to be like, what would Jesus do?
Pray about it, right? Get some alignment. I may not say what would Jesus do, I'm not gonna lie to you, but I will say, right, what do your spirit feel? And
it tells you right away. Your spirit tells you right away.
If you're even questioning it at that point,
you already know.
That's what I've learned. If you don't have peace about something, right, the word says stand still. And for me, I've learned, because I haven't stood still in so many things, that you don't have to do it all over again. So you might as well either wait or seek, right? Because He said seek. And you will hear. Knock and the door will open, right? Call, right? Ask and I'll answer. But you said something that made me think about the dating world when you said we should have friends that are like-minded and like faith, right? One of the main reasons that this dating pool is so trash, these dating streets are so terrible.
There's still good men out there.
I am married.
I'm not saying there's not good men.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is, because one of my non-negotiables in my dating space is that the man that I am with has to have this likeness with me, right?
Equally yoked.
They call it equally yoked in the word, because I've been in spaces where he can have the money, he can have the cars, he can have the house, he can have the job. But when we're not aligned spiritually, then there's a battle, right?
Big battle.
And so that has been my biggest challenge, finding a man who don't just go to church. Don't just say, I grew up in church, or I believe in God. Because
that's great.
God, the devil believe in God.
Right?
Yeah.
He knows
him. He knows him, right? But do you hear from him? Can you cover me? Do you seek him in your own walk? Because if you don't seek him, then you can't lead us. Because baby, how you listening to what he's saying?
And I read somewhere the other day too, somebody posted in a comment of a video that I was watching that somebody was talking about the women submitting to the man. And one of the girls posted in the comment, I can submit to him as long as he submits to the Lord.
That part. Right? Because
and I was like, period.
It says the man submits to Christ.
Yeah.
Right? The woman submits to the man as he submits to Christ.
Yeah.
Baby, it's hard for me to submit if you ain't doing your part.
Exactly.
Because what I need to do is, all right, who you getting your message from?
Right.
Who you getting this guidance from?
Right. From your brain. Right.
And then I can't, and again, and we'll hear like your marriage perspective. But from past hurts, because I remember like when I was going through my divorce, and I was going through some spiritual counseling. And one of the comments was to learn how to put my heart in God's hand first. Because if I put my heart in God's hands, he won't allow it to be broken, meaning he will protect it. Right. And so if I don't have a man who loves God, then you hurt me because my heart is no longer protected if I move it out of God's hands
100%,
and then give it to you. But if it's in God's hands, you're going to seek God for me. Meaning my heart never has to move because you're always seeking God before you even talk to me. So he's still covered. And when she gave me that analogy, I was like,
that's so good.
She said, the moment you have to take your heart out of God's hands to give it to somebody, you've already made the wrong move. And I was like,
but we've lived that. We've experienced
over and
that.
over. Yes. And so in this space, I can't tell you that I've met a man that I like and attracted to. Help me, Jesus.
I know. I'm praying for you. Both of y'all.
That has seeked God. Some man. But it may have been me, Jesus.
Listen, the devil will put men in front of you that you're like, Lord help me, because this looks real good right now.
But I'm like, seek God for me because my heart, I'm not moving it out of his hands. And I've had some amazing men approach me. And my question, do you go to church? Do you love God? Do you pray? And they like, and I'm like,
yeah.
Well, I guess we're going to have an amazing dinner. But that's it.
Again, like we don't serve an almost God. He's going to give it to you all the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when I was single, I lived so many years desiring love and wanting love. And I would be like, I love God so much that I could compromise this part.
No,
and I would be like, I could get them to come to church.
Yes.
I could get them to read the Bible. They turned my world upside down.
That is the worst. To try to save a man, I ain't doing it.
No.
Yeah, I tried. It doesn't work.
It's so, when I say it is so tiring to save a man, listen, I did it. Because as soon as they get mad at God, they get mad at God.
Yeah.
And then they stop coming to God to hurt you. And it's like, oh, you really didn't love
it never was
doing this for me.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to force you to love or believe in something that you're just doing it because you want to win me over.
Right.
And it's the same thing when men ask you, what is it that you want in a man? I feel like I don't need to tell you that. Just show me who you are and I'll decide if he aligns with me or not. So, so it's like I need to be with somebody who's already there as far as their faith, because I already been loved by worldly men. I've already been loved by the wrong
Give me a
things.
Jesus man.
I just want a man who's going to see me differently, who's going to, again, we talked about this the last time. There has to be a physical attraction, but that's not the only thing that I have to offer. I want you to see me, hear me, listen to me. It is a part of it, but it's not like the main thing.
No, Jesus first, but looks.
So let's talk about friendships, faith and friendships. Because I remember when I first came to the faith, I lost people in my life, right? Because I was no longer marrying the twerker.
Not the twerker.
I still twerk at home. And I feel like there was some misunderstanding with some of my friends because they felt like I was pressuring them. Although, we talked about it. I just wanted to show them. It's like when you're working out and you're doing a new exercise and it's working for you.
So excited
and I'm going to call you and I'm going to be like, hey, I started this new diet. I started this new exercise. You have to try it out. Yeah. That's,
good news. Anytime we have good news. We
I wanted, I want people to experience the peace that comes with it. Again, Christianity isn't easy, especially when it comes to the battles. But when you have the firm faith and you have the foundation and and you go back to think to the places that he has brought out of the places that he has brought you out of. And when you're driving sometimes and you're talking to him and he brings a glimpse of the past.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow. So yeah, I was super excited, and they just felt a little bit pressure. I think it was just a misunderstanding because going from the Marian that I was to this drastic change of it was just very drastic for them. And I guess they didn't have time to adjust to it. So I had to give them some time too. To process. But I just remember praying for my friends and I'm like, Lord, I want you to start calling them.
But it's also a spiritual battle, right? Because what does darkness have in common with light? And so a lot of times we take that blame, but sometimes it is the separating.
And God has to separate you. God has to separate you so you can, focus on him and not depend on people.
Especially if you were a person, right?
But I remember praying for my friends and I'm like, Lord, whatever you do, I just want you to start calling them one by one. And he has done it. Yeah. There's only one left. Yeah. And we're coming for you. There's only one left, and it happened very fast. Yeah. At the beginning I was like, I cried a lot because I'm like, God, you told me, and this is not what you're doing. But I just remember, patience, gentleness, fruit of the Spirit.
It'll also bring you new people, right?
Yeah.
Like this is how we got this sisterhood. So I think he knows. Mm-hmm. I think he knows. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
So how we wrap this up has been is we always ask our guests, or we will start asking our guests to give a grown woman advice on whatever topic you want. Can be faith, can be friendship, but just an advice where something that would stick with people, especially women. What would be that grown woman advice?
That grown woman advice. You ended it now. You got to come with some bars. You know?
Yeah, I think I'll give the advice that I'm experiencing right now. So the advice that I want to give to women is learning how to rest. Mm-hmm. And I think we talk about it so often and we think we can come home from work and maybe turn on Netflix or and binge watch something for hours or, sleep a couple extra hours, whatever that might look like. But I really don't think too many women really know how to rest well. And even resting with the Lord. I don't know how to do that very well, but I'm being forced to do that right now. I'm being forced to do that right now because I was recently diagnosed with an eye disease that is only most common in men 40 to 50-year-olds. So I'm like, I asked the doctor, I'm like, I have the mentality of a 40, 50-year-old man. And he's like, are you stressed? I'm like, no. But I operate on stress. And I don't.
I think a lot of us do.
I think a lot of us do. And we don't realize how stress can manifest itself in the physical. And I think it's important that women are really intentional about taking care of themselves. And we have so many things that we have to balance, especially now that we're a working group of women, right? We're serving in ministry, we're working, we're entrepreneurs, we're taking care of our children, taking care of my husband and my household. And we balance so many things that we can get overwhelmed. And I think in this season, I'm learning how to rest, but rest well. So what does that mean? It means that I will literally block out a half a day or a day where I'm able to take a deep breath. You guys know me.
Yeah.
Both of you know me. And you know that I can be, when I introduced myself in the beginning and I said I could be hard on the outside, it's because I'm realizing I've held that stress in me so deeply that I get frustrated easily. I'm very short. And when I've been able to sit down and really evaluate what my stress was doing to me, both in my health and then in how I respond to environments and people. I've been able to really just learn, I think, over the last month. And so what I would encourage each woman to do that's listening to this, and men too, is sit down with yourself, really write down everything that you're going through. Take an evaluation of what's on your plate. What can you say no to? Where should your boundaries be? And then what are your priorities? My priority is with the Lord. Am I really spending the time that I want with him and not just doing like a routine thing with him? Am I spending time with my husband and my family that really need me to pour into them at this time? And then everything else can follow. But I have tried setting boundaries in the beginning of the year. But when my health is being attacked now, it's like I really need to be serious about it. So evaluate your stress, evaluate what's causing that, set up boundaries for yourself, and also ask God for help, and learn how to rest well.
Love it. Yeah, love it.
That was great. I think this was amazing. We're definitely going to have you back.
Yes, faith and friendships. Yes, yes. And we're going to see you on the 23rd because you're going to be helping us with some things.
Yes, some August amazing 23rd. Things coming, guys.
She's like, what's happening? We'll fill her in. But no, faith and friendships. I think that's the name of the podcast. Very important. Faith and friendships. Happy birthday again.
Happy birthday.
It's your birthday. It's your birthday. It's your birthday.
I should put the video up when we're singing happy birthday.
Yes. No, we got to put in
happy birthday
your
video.
Happy
Marilyn
birthday
Monroe
video.
Happy birthday
and
video.
when you were on the boat screaming. We're going to insert both of those.
Doing a leg curl.
We're going to insert so you can see all of the birthday celebration. But thank you for sharing your grown woman advice. Thank you for creating a safe space for those listening. And as Marian said, being vulnerable, which I think you're always with us. But now it's in front of the camera. So yeah.
It takes time for me, but
I know. She was like very like, because the Lord said, and then she no, awesome. But thank you guys for just tuning in for another episode. Make sure to follow us. Make sure to support. Tag us. Tell us what was your favorite part. Tell us, how are you dealing with your faith? How is that looking for you? And is there a topic or any advice you would love for us to share in the next one? But until then, this is the Grown Woman Podcast.
Till next time. Bye. Oh my goodness.